Alright, everybody out there, what's your favorite phylactery? Today's sponsor is the best available. Come see these intrepid adventurers grow stronger and delve into the dungeon of the Mad Mage in a lovingly edited and illustrated D&D web series. Link in the description. By far, my favorite was a statue with a hollow head. Now, that might not sound too interesting, but what made it devious was that it wasn't hidden. Nor was it even a secret that it was their phylactery. It was sturdy, sure, but it was out in the open, in the courtyard of a thriving kingdom's castle. The trick was that the kingdom's prosperity was due to the Lich. This wasn't a good Lich, but he didn't care about the kingdom as long as they didn't bother him. But a Lich needs food, so they made a deal. Sacrifice enough people to keep him fed, and the kingdom wouldn't have to worry about the monster problems on the borders. The kingdom reasoned that this loss of life was less than what they'd lose defending the borders, and the Lich didn't specify who had to be sacrificed, so they gladly accepted, primarily using death row inmates when possible. Over time, this arrangement allowed the kingdom to focus on other things without worrying about border defense. Meanwhile, all undead within the kingdom became either peaceful or even helpful. The Lich created a scenario where the kingdom would fight and die to keep this statue protected because, in the end, it was worth it. The Lich had his food source secured and the greatest defense against any would-be hero. To destroy the phylactery would mean undead running rampant and the kingdom's border protection collapsing, taking down one of the best places to live regardless of your social status. This one works well if you have a party of one or more wizards. The phylactery is the Lich's spell book containing several rare 8th level and 9th level spells. Now, rules as written, it takes 2 hours per spell level to copy a spell, which would mean 18 hours for just one 9th level spell, not including rest. But the Lich comes back after 1d10 days. Destroy the spell book or gain access to top level spells. Pretty tough decision. For a 3.5 game that I ran in a homebrew setting, I had a baddie who was a unique druid-based Lich with a phylactery in the form of a beehive. He stuck it in a random tree in the middle of a forest, far from any civilization. The only defense was that it was nearly impossible to find, much less figure out that it was a phylactery and not just a normal beehive. I came up with an idea a while back, an alliance of Liches called the Cold Coalition, who created identical phylacteries. Every time they got a new member or one of them was slain and reconstituted, they all gathered and shuffled them. None of them could destroy another without risking their own unlife, and they were all incentivized to protect each other as if their unlife depended on it. They also didn't want to lose their current bodies because reconstituting near their phylactery would mean its possessor knew whose it was, giving them leverage until the next shuffle. If an adventurer defeated one or destroyed the nearby phylactery, some other Lich would be destroyed. The rest would be unhappy with the one who failed the coalition, and a price must be exacted. So basically, our DM decided that just one Lich wasn't enough of a threat, and had us encounter 3 mini-boss Liches. These Liches were the result of wizards who had found a shortcut to Lichdom, homebrew. The shortcut limited the number of times they could resurrect, turning them into Lich-type beings, albeit ones weaker than if they hadn't cut corners. Now, how does this tie into your question? Well, the phylacteries of these Liches were essentially Matryoshka dolls, representing how many resurrections they had left. Each lesser Lich's phylactery would lose a layer with each death and resurrection, and they would face final death once the last layer was destroyed. Now, of course, we could try to find these dolls instead of fighting each Lich 3 or 4 times, but locating them would be as much work as uncovering the big Lich's phylactery. So, we opt to kill them repeatedly until they died permanently. I liked these more than a standard Lich because it didn't feel pointless to fight them without knowing where the phylacteries were. If they were as powerful as a full Lich, we would have tried to find the phylacteries first, but since they were not as big as a threat, we chose to kill them repeatedly. A family. My Lich kidnapped a bride on her wedding day. The husband and the party had a jolly old dungeon crawl to rescue her. Aww. What they didn't know was that all the people they killed in connection to the couple's bond contributed power to the spell. They rescued the damsel, the new couple got a tidy sum of cash, and the Lich was now firmly attached to their bloodline. As long as their family line continued, the Lich would return. I had a player who became a Lich, and the first thing he did was use Polymorph Any Object 3.5 edition several times on his phylactery, turning it into a mundane, average-looking rock. He then hired an NPC party to take a random assortment of mundane items, including the rock, and scatter them in specific locations. He did this to create a double-blind, foolproof way of hiding his phylactery, and to make sure no one would know exactly where it was, defeating most information-gathering spells and abilities. I have one Lich whose phylactery was his own skull. The story was that while he was living and researching Lichdom, he had a backup clone. A rival wizard killed him, so he awoken the clone and began plotting his revenge. His rival had kept his skull as a trophy. So one night, the would-be Lich came back, defeated his rival, and kept him prisoner until he finished his research. He used the rival as the sacrifice for the final step, and used his original skull as his phylactery. He keeps it in his chambers disguised as a decoration, while a fake phylactery is in a trapped dungeon that he uses for prisoners. I have a druid Lich in my game who is in the process of ascending to godhood. She's more of a force of nature that can be bargained with, rather than an enemy the players can actually defeat. More than 1,000,000 years ago, she willingly threw herself into an enormous volcano to save the land she protects. Everywhere the ash falls, the phylactery exists. Rivers have transported the ash tens of thousands of miles to fertile deltas, glaciers have scattered the ash across plains, and the minerals from the volcano have been incorporated into the bones and fibers of significant fraction of the continent's living creatures. To kill her, you'd essentially have to kill most of a continent. She feeds the phylactery by offering a bargain: eternal reincarnation with or without your memories and abilities, per your preference, but only as a creature in her ecosystem. The wildlands are filled with plants and animals who were once mortals that took her bargain. If you decide you're tired of reincarnation, you can leave the cycle. She's true neutral, but leans slightly toward good, at least in terms of respecting agency. Her ascension will split her continent from the prime material into a new plane. Demons are trying to exploit this plane tectonic event in a way to slip past the powerful mortal magic that bars them from entering the prime material. The Lich doesn't particularly want to let the demons in, but she's not stopping her ascension for their sake. Well, to be fair, she can't, actually, as it's already well underway. The players, a group of raw recruits, are tasked with investigating and stopping the various schemes the demons have devised to break through the rift. Unfortunately, they're a bunch of city folk from a rapidly industrializing empire that the Lich, well, kinda hates. So some trust building will be needed. I haven't run this yet, but I'm planning to. The Lich in my campaign, who hasn't been introduced yet, loves mimics. To the point where he has a pet mimic disguised as a cat statue that he treats like a real cat, much like Blofeld in James Bond stroking a cat on his lap all the time. With that context out of the way, he has a room in his lair with his phylactery on a pedestal. However, there are several other pedestals with identical copies of his phylactery. Predictably, only one is real, while the rest are either inanimate objects or mimics. If the Lich is connected to the party's usual social circles, I've always loved the idea of the phylactery being something that someone else needs to stay alive. The party has delved and researched and at long last discovered that the phylactery for the evil they keep facing is the artificial heart implant of the elderly retired adventurer who mentored them throughout their journey. This mentor's own quest was to fight back against this Lich. Or the phylactery is a graft implanted in the base of the skull of the last heir of the kingdom's rightful ruling family. The party can slay the Lich, but in doing so would either kill or render brain dead the last hope for stability in the kingdom. The Lady Divine. Straight from a one-shot in the GM's Guide to Legendary Dragons called Hold My Beer. This concept involves a Lich named Lady Divine in the final fight. but without a stat block. She's too powerful for the players to fight, so instead, she battles a dragon from the book, and their fight spills into the players' battle. But I thought there was more I could do with her. In a campaign I want to run, I imagine her as extremely vain. She became a lich for power, but at the cost of her beauty? Huh? Hell no! She wants that back! Gotta be cute after all. So, her phylactery is a mirror. You know, the classic Snow White, "Who's the most beautiful of them all?" trope. For those who aren't the lady, the mirror shows them who they want to be. To shatter it, a person must fully reject what they desire most. Anyone who can't do that won't be able to shatter it permanently. Lord of Elemental Evil. This idea came from a player in my current campaign who plays the daughter of a Witch of Flames and doesn't know her parents. But her father is a sorcerer lich inspired by Pointy Hat's video on the topic. The player is an Emberheart sorcerer, so I immediately thought of elemental sisters connected to the lich. They are all his phylacteries. Sorcerer liches take control of one of their family members when they are near death, so he's always keeping tabs on them. Meanwhile, the mother is seeking a way to kill him permanently without harming the kids. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know in the comments below what's your favorite phylactery. And of course, if you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, running, and the heat on pumping, make sure to join our membership program. You don't have to, but if you do, you get early access to videos and maybe a little bit more. We are working on it. Until then, we love you all. Please be safe, happy, good to each other, and we'll see you next time. Toodaloo for now.